Ibrahim Nadheem had, until last month, spent 26 years as a government worker, providing security at Maldives International Airport, through which over 1 million tourists enter the idyllic Maldives every year. On May 6, however, the 45-year-old received a letter from Aviation Security Command informing him that intelligence services deemed him a national security threat, thus ending his employment, after he attended anti-government protests a few days earlier. "My rent in Maldives is MVR 18,000 $1,100, said Nadheem, originally from the archipelago's southern atolls. "How can I manage?" Unable to pay his bills, his children's tuition has been cancelled while his family consider returning south where living is cheaper but work is scarce. Nadheem is one of dozens who have lost their jobs since anti-government protests brought an estimated 20,000 people to the teeming capital last month, calling for an end to togovernment brutality and the release of former President Mohamed Nasheed, the country's first democratically elected leader who was sentenced to 13 years imprisonment earlier this year. Local human rights group the Maldivian Democracy Network reports that 58 similar cases are currently with the Employment Tribunal, with reasons cited for dismissal including protesting against the lawfully elected government and untrustworthiness based on intelligence information. "People are scared," explains Nadheem, a proud supporter of the magnetic Nasheed, who for many has come to embody the fight against climate change abroad and autocratic rule at home. Nadheem fears a return to government intimidation will reduce attendance at the next opposition rally, a 3-day sit-in planned for Friday. "You can't speak freely in Maldives." After being labeled not peaceful by the government, the orderly march across the 2-kilometer island on May 1 later descended into ugly clashes with police, resulting in injuries to both sides and hundreds of arrests. Pro-government MPs immediately called on authorities to identify and dismiss all government workers who make up more than 7% of the population who participated in the rally. This parliamentary group calls on the government to terminate such employees from government offices and make room for those that do not promote anarchy. Ahmed Nian, the Progressive Party of Maldives parliamentary group leader, told reporters the next day. Opposition party leaders arrested in the hours following the May Day clashes now face terror charges similar to those that saw Nasheed jailed for 13 years last March. After international condemnation of Nasheed's case, outraged U.S. senators this week called for a reconsideration of bilateral relations while the Maldivian government continues to fiercely reject perceived interference in its judicial system. Icelanders descend on capital. Ibrahim Nasheed, who heads the opposition Maldivian Democratic Party's MDP Transport Committee, says that those outside of the capital remain undeterred. "People are ready to come again and again, in spite of brutality," he said, after traveling around the central atolls ahead of the June 12 event. The MDP, which still considers Nasheed its leader in spite of government moves to strip him of his title, has arranged boats to travel from across the country's 26 atolls. Between 5,000 and 7,000 journeyed to the capital for the May Day demonstration, explained Ibrahim, who believes their participation will be crucial again this week. "If people in Maldives see arrivals from the islands, they will definitely come out," he said. After attempts to stop some boats on May 1, as well as derogatory threats from one pro-government MP to stop island people traveling to Maldives, all vessels have taken great care to ensure safety requirements are observed. "But the government knows people are vulnerable," adds Ibrahim. "It's easier to control people in the atolls. His assertions appear to be supported by last weekend's comfortable victory for Faris Malmoun, son of the former 30-year dictator Malmoun Abdul Gayoom, in a by-election. Both President Abdullah Yameen Gayoom's less charismatic half-brother and the PPM made clear that future development of the island was contingent on Faris's election. The campaign saw the island of Tigaru's 900 residents receive an X-ray machine and new air conditioning units from the PPM, along with the promise from the president of a new power generator. The Tigaru contest was called after the two-decade incumbent Mohamed Nasheed received a 25-year sentence for corruption offences, first lodged in 2009. The PPM member had successfully evaded the charges prior to a public falling out with the influential tourism minister. Will intimidation work? Friday's rally comes during the school holidays and just 6 days before the start of Ramadan, making the attendance hard to predict. Male's 130,000 population has been swelled by Icelanders traveling to shop and for tertiary medical care. Their numbers are absorbed by webs of extended family as compact as the streets of the island metropolis. Sentiment against the government has grown, but let's see how big the attendance is, says Ismail Mohammed, whose own story indicates that intimidation has spread beyond the civil service. I know that if I go then I am risking my job and the government might use it to further pursue the criminal charges I am facing after May 1 St, he muses. It's two levels of intimidation. Ismail, who works for a private company in Mail, was arrested by masked Special Operations Police as the rally descended into running street battles. After being detained for an unprecedented 15 days, his employers have warned him against further political activity, making clear that another arrest will result in his termination. The goal of the May Day protests was to prevent attendance at the next rally, says Ismail, who asked that his real name not be included in this article. I feel like both the Prosecutor General and my Human Resources Department are watching for my Twitter activity on June 12th. While some have cited the government's willingness to begin negotiations as a sign of the opposition's success, with all its leaders currently in custody or self-imposed exile, only one of the three opposition parties have as yet sat down with the authorities. Both Ismail and Ibrahim suspect that this week's negotiations between the government and the Jamhuri Party, JP, could be no more than a last-gasp attempt to stop its supporters from participating on Friday. The JP's official opposition to the government has become increasingly muted as tax authorities target the businesses of its leader Qasim Ibrahim. With the accounts of his villa group frozen, thousands of employees have been left without pay, while the group's airline Flyme has pared back services to the atolls. The combined effect of government intimidation means a large turnout on Friday is far from assured as an atmosphere of repression unseen since the height of the Gayoom era takes hold of the archipelago. Build-up to this weekend's event has been less boisterous as the repercussions from May Day continue to reverberate. The opposition announced this week that the march would culminate in a 3-day sit-in protest. One person's attendance on Friday, however, is guaranteed. I'm hoping for change, if there is a good crowd, says a determined Nadheem. I'm fighting for democracy. I support President Nasheed, he fights for our rights.